Welcome back to Judgment Free Zone. I'm really excited and honored to have my first guest of this season on, Charise Dickerson. Yay! Okay, I was just telling her, I was like, I don't know how to start this, especially with people as we come on that might have some more hard feelings towards me potentially. But Charise, I don't think does. But I really want you to be able to introduce yourself, let people hear from you who you are and how we know each other.
So my name is Charise Dickerson, and I've known you, Abby, forever and a day since you were like in diapers. So we're like technically family, but not family, but we're family. But you're my cousin.
Yep, that's what
Nice.
we say.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we're not blood. So
Right.
basically our moms knew each other. I've heard this story like my whole life that they've known each other like 20 years before you and my
Yeah.
brother were even born.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they've been besties forever.
Yep.
And so then we grew up together, and then we grew up, and then we see each other every now and then, or talk every now and then. And here we are.
It is definitely far and few between, but that was also something that I kind of said. It was just like, it's like I see you, but I think I see you, but I don't.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, normal to see
Yeah.
you, to have you pop on and be here. And you're my brother's age, right?
Yeah.
So this is funny because this is also something I've been thinking about, because we like think we know each other, but there's so much about each other we really don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, because you were at a point my brother's bestie.
Yeah.
When you guys were little.
Yeah, me and Aaron grew up together. I mean, yeah, we were like besties all the way up until I don't know, maybe 6th grade. Elementary school. Like when middle school started happening, and then high school we just drifted apart. And so, but yeah, there's family pictures, me and Aaron, or me and your brother, me and your brother, me and your brother, the whole time.
It's okay. You can say his name.
Okay. Okay.
It's not like people probably can't look it up if they wanted to know who my brother was.
Okay. Well, yeah, so me and him.
It's okay.
Multiple pictures, and I remember the tree house. That was like legit the thing in the back.
Like in my first house?
Yeah.
The one oh wow.
Oh my gosh.
I have like one picture with a kid. I don't know who that kid is. I should find that picture. But there's a kid sitting next to me that I have no idea who it is.
Interesting.
I do remember a boy named Griffin. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I remember.
Do you remember Griffin?
I just don't remember what he looks like. Maybe it was Griffin.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, but yeah, so I don't know if you heard me say this before on the podcast, but there was one time I was talking with my therapist, and for a long time I felt like I couldn't remember things. And then like eventually she was just like, no, you remember a lot. They were just all bad things. And I was like, oh, solid. Like, that's cool. So, but I don't like, they're like, this is honestly going to be so healing for me too. This bringing on people like that I don't even have like hurts with, because I'm honestly really hoping that it'll fill in a lot of gaps for me, like memories that I want to remember, right? Because those things as humans, we just naturally block out because to protect ourselves. Like, and so I'm really curious to see things from your point of view, to hear how you grew up, honestly, because again, those are things we didn't talk about as much, and kind of see how that goes for you. So where do you want to begin? What do you want to share? What's on your heart this morning?
Yeah, so definitely appreciate our mothers being friends, because then I wouldn't have known you, and it's a blessing to know you. So, and I love you, and I always will.
I love you. Thank you.
And so there's a lot of good memories. I remember a lot. Well, let me take that back, because my childhood was a little bit wild chaos too. Not so much like there's a lot of aspects there, but I do, when I look at pictures of like when I was hanging out at your house or like with your brother or whatever, then I'm like, oh yeah, like I remember that. But to like bring up a memory, I don't remember all of them. I do remember the tree house. I do remember hanging out at your house with your brother a lot. And I always had
and I mean, you're 7 years older, right? So for me at that point, I mean, 6th grade, you're what, 11?
Yeah.
So basic math skills. 11 minus 7
Yeah.
is something. And that's how old I was. So I was little.
I do math too. I love it.
Yes.
Yeah, you were little, but I do remember you like in diapers and stuff like that. And even then, I was like, "Oh, Abby, I love Abby."
Well, I looked up to you
Oh,
like so much. Like that, like definitely wanting that big sister vibe. You know what I mean? Like I just wanted to be around you. Even grow like even into like young adulthood. Like I very much just wanted to be around you.
yeah, I know. Me too. I always like wanted to take you under my little wing, and I
Mm,
guess I did whenever I saw you. Whenever, which as we grew up was not often, but when we did, it was still just like natural. Like nothing. There was no years or anything between us. And then you and
yeah.
my brother though became a little bit close
Yeah,
because you
we
were
did.
like the same age. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
did get close over the years. I think when we both, got married the first time, I think that's like really when we kind of like split. But then there was a
Mhm.
period in between that where we started to get close again.
Yeah.
And then I think since then, like between both, it was like between right at the end of our divorces, we started getting close again. And then we both got remarried again. And
Yeah.
then we kind of haven't chatted
Yeah. I
since.
know. Yeah. It is kind of cool though how me and your brother were like friends when we were younger, and then you and my brother became closer when you guys were older because
Mm-hmm.
you and my brother were the same, like in diapers together,
Yep.
which is that's so funny. Wow, we've known each other forever.
Literally,
Yeah.
literally forever. Yeah, because in high school, yeah, thinking about it, Nathan and I were like super close because I went to prom
Yeah.
with him.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so when I would talk to him, because at one point me and my brother were close, like I guess towards like my early 20s and when he was a teenager, we were closer than we were previously. But I do remember him saying like, "I'm with Abby. I'm gonna go hang out with Abby. Oh yeah,
Oh,
you should come hang out with me and Abby. Me and Abby are gonna." I was like, "What?" And at one point I was like, "Wow, you guys have like really gotten close." And he's like, "Yeah, it's great." I was like, "Oh, I love it."
I hope I know. I was thinking too, like that'd be really cool down the line because I did reach out to Nate too and ask him to come on, and
Oh, you
I
did?
don't know if he told you when he came into town recently.
Oh yeah, for Mother's
Yeah,
Day.
yeah, and so he was like, yeah, totally, and then he was like, we should get together, and then life
Yeah,
happens and we didn't get
yeah,
together. But I was like, that would be so cool to eventually have all three of us on, like
yeah.
bring in a different like perspective and dynamic to all of it.
Oh my
I could
gosh.
ask my brother, but let's be real, that probably is not
Yeah.
going to happen. So that'll be interesting. I haven't thought like because Daniel, my husband, like said that too. He's like, "Are you going to ask?" I was like, "I don't think we're ready for that. That's the healing process that is still in the works for us."
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Yeah, I don't know. It was, I did, when me and Aaron like weren't friends anymore, it was very heartbreaking for me because we were
mm,
very close. Well, we're just growing up. And so I was like, yeah, at one point I was like, we're gonna be best friends for Aaron. But we were
mm,
also little, like my kid's age, like 11 and then 8 and 7. So at that age, like everybody's gonna be your best friend forever. But life happens, and so he's got to have his own healing journey and seek that out for himself. I still
mm,
love him, wish him
yeah.
the best, but hopefully one day that can all be mended, and then all four of us can sit on the screen or even just go eat dinner or something. That would be amazing. But until then,
Yeah.
we can hopefully invite my brother and he can make it work. I mean, we can invite him, but hopefully he can make the time. Make
I
it work.
can like literally feel that anxiety in my body thinking
Yeah.
about having a meal with you, Nathan, and my brother sounds like terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely it was. So I don't know if you saw, I went and did a retreat recently like in
Oh,
Austin.
oh yeah.
And yeah, so it was a therapeutic like bufo and breathwork event.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if you've ever heard of that or know what that is,
Breath
or
work.
the
I
breathwork piece you probably have heard because I like share my life story around breathwork. But
Yeah, well,
anyways,
in
basic.
dance too, we have to do a lot of breath work. Like breath work is so prevalent in
Yes.
dance. So,
Yeah.
the other part, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so it's a therapeutic psychedelic, basically earth
Oh,
medicine to help. They actually call it God's molecule.
okay.
So it it's very like soft and can bring you. I mean, anything that you ask it can, if you set
Hmm.
your intentions right, like all of these things. So I went in, and this is the first time I've shared this with anyone other than Daniel, by the way. So I went in, and it hit me hard. It's really interesting, like how much you, or I speak for myself only, but how much I didn't realize, like, I want control and how much I don't want it all at the same time.
Yeah.
Like how difficult it really is to really trust and to surrender into whatever you do believe, whatever your higher power is.
Yeah.
And man, it hit hard. Like I literally was like in the deepest, darkest parts of my soul and was like, just let go. Like you don't even want it, Abigail. Like I'm literally throwing up, Charise. I'm throwing up on this like plant medicine, and I'm like, just let it go. Like just release it. And I couldn't. I still couldn't fully give it up. Like I was just like so mad because I'm like, I don't even want this. And then it came to me like that I needed to forgive my brother,
Mm.
and I didn't expect that. I was like, oh, like it just hurt. It hurt a lot because, like, I looked up to my brother, and he was a father figure to me, you know,
Yeah.
and just like it's been really interesting for me, like seeing that forgiveness right now play out, and like I want healing, like I want the best for my brother, that is pure. Like I do want the best for him. It's that piece of like all this like anger of growing up. And then also again the empathy piece of like I can't imagine, again you can relate, like being 7 years older and raising a teenager, like how now being a parent, and I'm a little bit older than he was when I have a teenager. My oldest is 13 now, and how hard that must have been. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
to raise me as a
Yeah.
teenager. Like
Yeah.
yikes.
Yeah.
That's a lot on
Yeah.
him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really interesting. Something that I've like seen with truths lately is that there's both, the truth is like there is a little bit of contradictory to truth. There's both and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's very true. I really had a really hard time with forgiveness for a long time, long time. And there was some situations in my life, well, one specifically where like I had a chance to meet with like a perpetrator that I felt for sure would never get forgiveness,
Mm,
and I was literally, when I ran into this person, um it was, I was like literally going to murder them because I said if I ever
mm,
see them again I'm going to literally murder them, and I was in a position where I could probably legally get away with it and be like, oh yeah, let's just chalk it up to there was a medical problem. But I'm telling you, when I walked into this room with this person, it was like just a shift, and forgiveness became so beautiful to me because
mm,
it was like, and it was so crazy because the forgiveness wasn't like even on my timing. If it was my timing, I probably would have been in prison forever because I was going to. But the timing of me being able to forgive somebody was just like heaven sent. And so in this forgiveness, the position that the other person was, the perpetrator was in, was almost like such like a weak spot that at first I was like, oh wow, like look at you, now you're weak and blah blah blah, and you can't, like, in my head I
mm,
was saying this. But then I was like, wait, like this is a chance that you have right now. Either you're gonna let it go, right, or you're gonna keep going on and being mad, and you could like just like shift your life forever by really killing this person. And so I didn't, obviously.
right.
I mean, I didn't. I'm
You
not in
still
prison.
here? I mean, we don't know. Who knows? No, I'm just kidding.
No, this could all be really nice prison background, but
Yeah.
but
Ah,
I forgave them, and it was the most beautiful thing. And then
mm,
literally, like after that, this person ended up passing. Well, not literally, but like a week later, the person ended up passing away. But I realized in that moment that, oh my gosh, like all this stuff in my life happened because of this person. Well, because I was acting out
mm,
because of what happened because of this person.
mm,
But I was able to get an opportunity to forgive. And it was like, oh my gosh, it was the most freeing thing in the
mm.
entire world. And so forgiveness is definitely a process. It's really hard to go through.
Yeah.
And like, I guess even fathom, like I could never forgive you. But
Mm,
I also learned, and studied and read a lot that it's just going to eat you up like physically, because we could
Yep.
or like internally, right? Like we could be all good on the outside, but if we're not fixing what's in here or even forgiving, then it leaves like that bitterness, and bitterness will just
Eat you up.
eat you up. And so I'm like, at that point when I saw that person, I'm just like, I'm not going to allow this any longer. Like it
Mm,
consumed my life, like being so upset at this person. And so I'm like, I'm just not going to let it consume me anymore. Like you don't get that power any longer.
mm,
So I'm just going to let this person be free. And, you know, and I could see in his face, it was, and I never said, hey, I forgive you. It was like I couldn't get it out, but there was like this mutual energy. Like we, both of us knew together that there was like a
mm,
release and a forgiveness, you know? And
mm,
so when the person was like looking me in my eyes, when we just sat there for a moment, just like looking at each other because it was a shock that we were around each other. And so then
mm,
we just knew. And then I don't know if this person was like felt released or whatever, but I'm saying all
mm.
that because there was other situations too where it took me 10 years to forgive somebody. Like
Yeah,
another
you had mentioned a couple of
Mhm.
things that you wanted to share. I want to give you that opportunity if you want
Yeah.
to go a little bit deeper
Okay.
into,
Yeah.
that story, if you want to share it, or,
Oh, yeah.
now that you're on camera, sometimes we can be a little afraid to like be vulnerable, but I of course want to encourage you that I know that your story, I
Yeah.
haven't even got to hear full versions of your story that I am interested in, that if
Yeah.
you I know that they can help people. So I would love it if you go a little bit deeper
Okay.
into.
Yeah, I don't mind. I just didn't know
Yeah,
if
yeah, yeah. No,
you wanted to
please.
go. Okay, yeah. So the person, I mean, he molested me, you know,
Mm,
from um 1 second, let me go close my door. I don't have earphones. Hold on.
solid. Again, as I've told Charise too, we are you're sitting, the vibe I like for my podcast is you're with us. Like
Yeah.
it's like you're sitting here having a real conversation, and we moms here. So like, but all of our kids are all here. So
Oh my
I
God.
mean,
Yeah.
they're not here in the room with us, Jesus, but they're outside of all
Yeah.
of our rooms. So we keep it safe and contained. I have lots of noisemakers.
Yeah, that's probably why you
So
were like, "Do you want to get headphones just in case?" I was like,
yeah, yeah.
"Nah."
Yeah, it's okay. It's a learning curve. Okay, go ahead.
So
All right.
here we go. So the person, yeah, so the person molested me for a very,
Mm.
very long time, like from 2 to 11, something like that. Maybe 4 to 11. Don't really recall the exact age, but
Mm.
anyway, so my life became very chaotic. Like I
Mm.
kept it a secret and then ended up telling my mom. And my mom was very good. I do feel fortunate that she like took action and like got him out of my life and called the police, did all the right things.
Do you
But
mind me asking, like,
yeah.
where did you know him? Like, how was he involved in your, like, family system? You know
So
what I
he
mean?
was
Like, was he a friend or?
well, he was like a family friend, but not really. Like he was my grandpa. That's what I called him, my
Mm.
grandpa, because my grandma has known him for like since they were teenagers. And so they were like besties. I don't know if they were dating at the time or whatever, but I always knew him as this is grandpa. And so that's what
Mm.
he was to me. And
I'm so sorry.
yeah, it's hey, you know what? It's but now like on this side of it, after I went through the healing and forgiveness and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, it's like it's so crazy because I'm like it's the most beautiful thing that could have
Mm.
the forgiveness was the most beautiful thing that could ever happen. That was really hard. And
Yeah.
but if I once you like heal and you go through these things and you have your story on the other end, I'm just like, oh my gosh, literally, like if that wouldn't have happened, this would have never taken place. And I wouldn't have been able to like impact this young person's life because of my story, because now their life has changed. So it's kind of when you heal and you have forgiveness and you do all these things, it's crazy how like your mindset shifts and like how
Yeah.
something so disastrous could be so beautiful at the same
Yeah.
time. I'm not saying that being molested or like going through that kind of trauma is beautiful because it's not. But
Right.
the outcome and the healing is beautiful.
Right.
So yeah, so with him, yeah, so he was the one that I wanted to like murder, and I used to say I need his address. I know the family still has it. Like, where is it? Obviously nobody would give it to me, but my prayer to God all the time was like, you are the guy who does all these things, right? So you can bring him to me. Like, I'm going to
Mm.
test you. Let me find him and I will do what I need to do with him, you know? And
Mm.
so that never happened, but not in my teenage years, because in my teenage years, it was just a lot of like broken relationships, and I became a really young mom. I mean, there was a lot of partying and like drugs and alcohol and running
Mm,
away. And I never went to prison. I never went to jail. Thank the Lord for that part. But I did do a lot of things just because the trauma was so much, and I didn't really know how to handle it, you know? So,
mm,
um, yeah, my son, my older son, like at one point ended up, my family had to come get him because I was so bad on drugs that
mm,
um, they were like, you either need to get yourself fixed and cleaned, or, you know, you can't be a parent. And I think at that moment I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm not this, I'm really deep down inside, I'm not this person. Like this is not who I am. This is just from trauma,
mm,
and I'm not going to be the mom that's like now a young mom, single mom, like her kid was taken because she was on drugs. Like that's not going to be my statistic. I can't do that. So I got
mm,
myself together and got myself right. And I had to go through a lot of classes and all these things. And then my son ended up coming back to me, you know, but the
mm,
day that he came, I was also a CNA at this time. Like I was doing caregiving. And so I never lost my license, which is another God thing, because if I would have lost my license, my story wouldn't have played out, you know? So there was like a lot of things in like my story that was also being protected for the sake of my story, you know?
mhm,
So when I was doing care CNA, I was working at this nursing home. And so the day that I got my older son back was like the day that I was working night shifts during this time. And so my grandpa was like a patient at the
mm,
nursing home, and so I was sitting there like charting. I don't know if the shift was almost ending or what, but I was at a point where I was charting. I must have had a break. And so I'm charting and I'm like listening to the nurses talk about whatever, like these patients. And I don't remember the room, but they said, oh yeah, I don't want to say his name, but I'm like, so and so, you know, so and so was in room, it was B2 or something like that, like bed, which meant bed two. And I stopped charting and I was like, what? I was just thinking in my head, like, what? And so I listened a little more, and they kept talking about like my grandpa's room, that he needed something. And so I went over to the nurse and I said, hey, I just want to clarify, did you say this room and this patient? Because I think I was supposed to go give him whatever he needed and I forgot, which wasn't the truth, but I just wanted to like go see, you know? And they're like,
mhm,
yeah, that's him. So I went in there and I was like, okay, God, like if this is like, did you really, really like, did I pass the test? Like, did you bring him to me? And so anyway, I walked in there
mm,
and like literally it was him. But I had to like recall my memory because I had to like look at the shoes. I remember his shoes were always Velcro and like his ears were kind of big. So I'm like, if this is him, I need these signs. And sure enough. So then I went over to him and I said, hey, or whatever, hi, Mr., you know, his last name. And I said, I think we forgot to give you some water or whatever it was. I'm like, we're just making rounds and I just wanted to come in and give you water. And he said, yeah, yeah. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, I'll be back with your water. So I went and left and got some water, but I went to his chart too, because I'm like, this is crazy. Like, if this is actually him, like, I'm going to see something in his chart that will stand out to me, that will for sure make me know that's him. So I was like flipping through the pages. And what's crazy is that his address was in Mesa. Like, he lived in Mesa, but I was working on 59th and like Dunlap or something like that, somewhere around there. So that's like a really far
right,
span to come all the way over to this care center. And so when I was flipping through, the power of attorney was his daughter, and his daughter has a name that I will probably never hear again on the face of this planet because it's such a different name. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like for sure him. So I was like, okay, like this is it. I'm gonna go. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go kill him. And so I went back in the room. That's it. I'm like, I can get away with it. So I went back into the room, and then literally, but when I walked into the room, I can't even tell. It was like a whole different light. Like the whole, it was like I walked into another dimension because
mm,
I walked in and I was like, huh. Like my whole like aura, my all of it just changed. I was like, no, I'm not gonna go kill him. Like that would be stupid. What are you doing? And I literally, it was like, you know, I I felt like God was telling me, like, I brought him here. What are you gonna do? You told me to test you. So what are you gonna do with it? And I'm like, okay,
mm,
so I got my son back. If I do actually kill him, then I will forever be that person in jail. And it's not even worth it anymore. You know, I was like, wow, like it literally brought me full circle. So I went
mm,
over to him and I said, well, here's your water. And I said, I just have a couple questions. Do you know my grandma? I gave him the name, and he said, yeah. And I said, "Oh," I said, "well, do you know my aunt?" And then I gave the name of my aunt too. And then I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Well, then I for sure know that you know my mom." And he said, "Yeah." And I gave him the names of everybody. And then I was like, "Well, I'm Charise." I said, "I'm Cindy's daughter." And I was like, "I know you remember me." And he just was like looking at me. And that moment was just like we were
Mm,
just sitting there, like I couldn't move. My eyes were just like stuck on him. Like we were just looking at each other. And then he looked away for a minute, but the look that he had, like he knew that he was so wrong and he knew like he was just full of shame. And I think that moment, that's when I was like,
mm,
oh, you know what? He's lived with that himself his whole life, you know? And so
mm,
after that, I said, okay, thank you. That's all I needed to know. And then I left and I went to like this linen closet and I was just crying and crying and crying. And I was like, oh
mm,
my gosh. But I guess I'm part of the reason I share that is to help somebody else, but also because that is so like to forgive somebody like that, you know, that's caused so much chaos. And to find out like he did it to his granddaughters and his daughter and all that
mm,
kind of stuff too. So he was a lifelong thing, a lifelong perpetrator. But in that moment too, I almost felt like, wow. I mean, once I found out
mm,
about that in that moment, I said, wow, you know what? There was something going on with him. Like, people don't just wake up
mm,
and want to like sexually assault people and molest kids and do all this stuff. So if this is happening, what happened to him in his life that he suffered all these years and this is just what he did? And so I don't know if he ever went to jail or not. He didn't go to
mm,
jail for my thing, which was very frustrating because then there was like became this frustration with the system. And
mm,
there is still a frustration with the system. Unfortunately, the system doesn't work fast enough for these kind of cases, and
yeah,
the logistics and the rules around these kind of cases are very frustrating. So he
yeah,
never
I
went to
feel that.
jail. Yeah, he never went to jail for it, which for me at the time felt like, oh, well, he got away with it. But then I'm like, you know what? He didn't. He lived his life doing this and he knew he was wrong, you know? And so I don't know what, I'm pretty sure I know where he went afterwards, but I honestly don't know. I don't know if he asked for forgiveness and then his afterlife is okay. Like, I don't honestly know. But, you know, like a week later, there was an emergency in his room. And so, what's even more wild is that in an emergency, like in a caregiving setting, there's like has to be two CNAs to one nurse in the room. You know, the CNAs have to assist and the nurse is like doing all the things. So there was an emergency and I ran in there because I was like, oh my gosh. And at that point, even then, I'm like, this is crazy. Why am I going to go help this dude? But whatever, this is natural. This is what I'm supposed to do. So I went in there. But when I went in there, there was already like two CNAs and one nurse. And so I said, oh, and then I thought, you know what? I'm going to see if I can stay in here. And then at that point, it was almost like I went invisible and I literally stood in. Nobody saw me. Nobody said anything to me. And they were like walking by me, like as if I was invisible. And I'm like, what is happening? But so anyway, he was stroking out, right? Like he was having a stroke. And so at one point, I stood in front of his, like against the counter in front of his bed and the nurses were helping and I was just standing there watching. And at one point, like we connected eyes again and we just sat there and
Mm,
like looking at each other. And then that's when I thought, okay, you know what, like this dude is full of shame. And I thought maybe this is what's happening, like he just needed to see me. And I don't know if that was so much that it sent him over to like
mm.
pass away or whatever. Obviously he had health problems because he was in a nursing home. But yeah, so that's my one story about
Wow.
forgiving. So
Thank you so much for being
yeah,
vulnerable and sharing that.
yeah, of course.
That's, yeah.
So for forgiveness for you, you know, it takes time. That was a
Oh,
long time.
yeah,
I was like 20,
for sure.
20 something, 24 maybe when that happened. And
Wow.
so I went from like 2 to 4, whenever it started, to like 24, you know, like that's a
Mm.
long time of like,
Yeah. Well, in 24, like, really is, as you know, we get older, like, man, is so young.
yeah, for
You're
sure.
so young. I mean, I was 23 or 24 too when my divorce happened
Yeah.
and I was homeless sleeping on couches. So it's wild to think that, as
Uh-huh.
parents that young, going
Yeah.
through those like major shifts, like
Yeah. I
is
know.
is really listening to you inspiration enough. Like that's a wild time that young.
Yeah, that was wild. Yeah. But you know, no matter the
Mm,
age, like it could take 5 years, it could take 15
well,
years, it could take 20, you know, like
yep.
I truly believe the timing is what it is and it's really hard, but I promise you, like on the other side, it's so beautiful, and it's more of like
Yeah.
for you, you know. And I used to think when somebody would tell me that, it's for you, like you have to forgive for you, and I was like, no, or for them, or however, I don't know, whatever the
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
is.
yeah. I know what you're talking about.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's not. Oh, yeah, like it. They're like, it doesn't make it right for them, but it's just like a release for you. And I was like, no, that means that everything's okay. And, you know, we know that. Well, not everybody knows that, but
Yeah.
that's not what that means. And it is a really beautiful thing to forgive. So
Yeah.
take your time, work through all the emotions and
Yep.
the treacherous like valleys and mountains that healing takes. But when you get over there and you do forgive, whether like, you know, whoever for you, your brother, and I'm sure other people in your life that you have to work
Yes.
through, right?
Right.
And so, you
The
know, when you get
list that I have going for this podcast, I have like a side for me, and I have a side for everybody to forgive. Hopefully, find their healing with me too.
yeah,
Literally, I started making a list because it's funny. Like I might have a list of people I think might need to forgive me, but they might already have, which will
yeah,
also be a cool thing to
yeah,
bring on too and
yeah.
here.
Yeah, so I think you're in like a really beautiful place. You know, like
Yeah.
to also learn to forgive, but also to know that you have to be forgiven because that other person is needing if they haven't forgave you, like that other person is needing exactly what you're seeking to have. And so it's almost I don't know, maybe it'll happen at the same time and maybe if you're forgiven and then it will release you to forgive or vice versa, you know. It's also it's like a I don't know, like an energy motion or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's interesting for me, like for, the things that I am working through forgiveness. It's, it's sometimes like there's, with my ex-husband, like I mean, my majority of my beginning healing journey, like what I talk about how I was in group therapy and, in therapy literally weekly, where I was driving out to Mesa. Literally up until this, it was 3 months ago, I was driving out to Mesa either every week or sometimes twice a week, up to every other week for the last 10 years to
Wow.
go, because my
Wow.
therapist is
Yeah.
amazing, by the way. If you need one, she out in
Yeah.
Mesa, she's
Uh-huh.
great. Okay, at the well. Brittany Johnson, shout out to her, changing lives.
Hashtag.
Yeah, hashtag Brittany. She's literally like, no joke. Okay, this is side, but I went to a retreat where's who I got my certification through, Troy Love. Also, shout out, holler at him. He's great. But she got to go at this retreat because she worked with him like through this. And there was one part where we do have to like connect with our higher power too. And if you don't know, Charise, or if I've shared more on I have a ton of spiritual and religious abuse. I don't know if you can relate to that. I
Yeah, we
feel like
talked.
maybe you
Yeah,
can
a little bit. Yeah.
because we grew up very similarly,
Yeah.
but I have a lot of that. So my struggle with God, higher power, again, whatever you believe is, has been hard at times. So, but literally, I'm not kidding. Brittany has like been my anchor of like when I think of what God, Jesus, higher power is Brittany.
Aw.
And so I'm telling you, like, if you need a therapist, like, she is so amazing. So, anyways, I don't know what I was saying before that, but she's awesome. So
That's okay. That's
I
what
think
needed
I
to
was
be said.
that is what needed to be said was, hey, you need a therapist, you get yourself out to Mesa if you in Arizona.
Hashtag Brittany.
Yes,
Yeah.
hashtag Brittany. Oh, I
Yeah.
think I was talking about forgiveness. Oh yeah, that I was out there all the time. That's what I was saying. Okay, we there. It's cool. Okay, it was that a lot of my healing has been able to forgive my ex. And I think that that's why I've been able to share so much, which about because I've always like tried to, as much as I can when it's appropriate, with the abuse that I went through with him, find reclaiming my voice was in
Mm,
itself forgiveness. Being able to connect back to self and being able to share my story for me has
yeah.
been liberating for me, because
Right.
that's how I was able to forgive was, you know, I'm sure, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm sure that, that might not be the case when you hear me sharing my story and
Yeah.
my truth within what happened, which I'm sure is, its own level of difficultness. I would feel similarly. I'm sure we all would when we're hearing things from someone else's version, right? Like just like I posted yesterday, we're the hero and the villain in everyone's story,
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know?
Yeah.
And so for me, I have been able to forgive him. It's so many pieces around that I'm
Yeah.
working through.
Yeah.
You know, again,
Yeah.
that deep hurt that I am working through with my brother is, because they're friends.
Mm.
And even now, and I'm struggling deeply, clearly, that it would come up in such a deep and sacred space of when I was doing that there are so many things that I really just think I was blinded to the fact that I wasn't forgiving him. And I
Mm.
think again that's what we do, right? To protect
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that's currently, does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah. Yeah.
making
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
You are. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
No, there. So, yeah,
Yeah.
because those pieces of your ex that you're working through, like that piece is,
No, him I've forgiven.
oh, but
My
you're,
ex, that's what I'm saying. It's like
okay.
my
Okay.
ex. That's why I'm saying I'm able to share so much about that story about him because I've forgiven him. It's all these like little things around
Yeah.
him
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
didn't realize I was still like holding on
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
You know what I
Okay. Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
even my mom, like I talk a lot about, don't get me, and again, I think that this is important for all of us. And I think, tell me if you disagree or agree with that. Again, it doesn't take away the pain of what these people did, even when we forgive them. We can still be sad or have emotions come up, right? Forgiveness
Yeah.
is grief. It's an ongoing process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I want people to hear that and know that like it's okay to be sad about what these people did to you still and forgive them.
Yeah.
Like it's
For
not
sure.
okay what these people did to you. It's not
For
okay
sure.
what these people did to me. And also I can forgive them over and
For
over.
sure.
What I just didn't realize was that piece, the both and piece that we're talking about. Like that it
Yeah.
can't, the truth of the intricacy of having it be, it's a little contradictory, and
Yeah.
it makes sense though.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's really big for you.
Yeah.
But, as you're working through, I don't know, maybe when you get to the point of like forgiving your brother, when, if you can, hopefully you can.
I
I hope
believe I will.
I
I'm
hope that for you.
I believe that
I
I
look
will
forward to
forgive
the
him.
day where I see you too. I know it stresses you out, but like just like a picture of you guys, or I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry. But it's crazy because when you forgive I think this is it. When you forgive, when things are connected like that, like it literally will start for like healing all these little outer things that are surrounding that specific person
Mm,
that needs to be forgiven, because that person is tied into, oh, this situation or this emotion or this is what happened or that person. And then it just like, it all kind of just like falls off a little bit, little by little.
mm.
It's like those things, I don't know what they're called, the
Yeah,
mining
yeah, yeah,
people where they do this little thing and they chip away.
yeah,
That's what happens when you forgive, So,
yeah,
and it's a beautiful thing. But yeah,
yeah.
definitely forgiveness is, I mean, I still, when I think about the things that happened, it's almost like a different kind of pain. It's almost, now it's like my little girl, like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, like that really happened to you. Or if I see 2 year olds or 4 year olds, I'll think I could never imagine, like I was that
Mm,
young. And it's like, okay, Charisse,
mm,
like, it's okay. It's almost like I have to go back to to my inner little girl and be like, no, you forgave him, you're fine. That's really sad, and now your job is just to
well,
like,
it's you reparenting her. It's you
yeah,
holding
hmm,
that
yeah,
space for her to be felt and seen
yeah.
and heard.
Yeah. So it becomes, and when you experience trauma, and everybody's level of trauma is different, So
Mm-hmm.
I can't say what that, whatever that person, somebody else went through that might not be trauma to me is going to be trauma to them. So we experience all these things in life. So of course, when you forgive or when you go through trauma like that, the trauma doesn't just wipe away. Like I feel like trauma is a lifetime of healing. Um, because I've done so much healing. I've gone through so much therapy and counseling and like EMDR. Is that the thing? I almost said
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
EMDR.
EMDR.
Whatever.
Yep,
EMDR.
yep, yep.
Dance is my therapy. Like I've danced. I danced since I was little, but then I took a break, and then here I am. Like I've been dancing for 5 or 6, 7 years. I don't know, however long we're doing this, and so that's therapy, you know. And then there's like breath work and that. I haven't like gone to a breath work session, but then again, I
You
have
come.
because in
Yeah.
dance sometimes it's just like we're just gonna do some somatics and breathe today, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's in itself is therapy, right? So there's like always these things that are helping the underlying thing that happened, but I also don't resonate with, oh, I'm still a victim, because I'm not. I'm not a victim anymore. That happened to me. I'm over here. I'm a survivor. Yes, there's going to still be feelings and pain, or like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, that was really sad, or some things in my life that I work, like, even I'm not even gonna front, like I still have things that I work through, like, wow, why did you react like that, Charise? Oh, that was from, like, so it's still like a flight or fight thing, you know. And so
Yeah.
there's still things all the time, like we're just
Well, it's
gonna,
a process. You're not going to get to the
yeah,
pedestal, right?
no,
That's what a
I,
lot of us
yeah,
think and
yeah.
want, right?
Mhm.
The pearly white gates open up right now and I'm healed. Like,
Yeah, well, when you've had trauma too, like an extenuating trauma of like over and over, whatever the level is, it like reshapes your brain. So to heal, it's almost like you have to heal forever, however many years. That's what I think. Like
yeah.
sometimes it takes so long to reprogram your brain and to reshift it and to reheal for however many years has happened to you, because within that trauma, it's like, oh, this trauma happened. So now, and then you almost produce more trauma to yourself because you act out. So
Well,
then
that's,
now you,
yeah, because our subconscious is looking
yeah,
for evidence to believe the thing that we believe about
yeah.
ourselves.
Uh-huh. So it's crazy. I don't know. I find now that I've done all this healing and like I'm able to talk about just this part of my story, because my story is whatever. When I talk about it, I'm like, I can't even believe that happened to me. I can't
Mm,
believe all this happened to me, and I still, like, I'm still parenting. I'm not a perfect parent, but like I refuse
preach.
to, like yes, one, I have my children.
Oh,
Yeah.
see, perfect timing, right? They're going to camp, right? You said?
Yeah, they're going to dance camp. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, you're
fun.
leaving? Oh. Okay, quietly. Yes, thank you.
Bye, children. See ya. Bye to dance camp.
When you guys leave, can you peek in and just be like, okay, thanks. Um,
But
so
yeah, about, I was gonna say, I don't know if you've heard this or about trauma, and this is what I think is, as I have like been curious around like the way things are worded in the Bible and the way things are done, right? I think you and I have heard this, that all sin is the same, right? Like, and what that really means. And like, I think it's interesting because when I look at it in the way of trauma, what my understanding and what I've learned a lot about trauma is that trauma isn't the event that happened to us, it's the beliefs that we've created around the event. And to me, that makes sense. Then if sin is all the same, then that makes sense, because it doesn't, that's where we start to like uphold, like, this happened to you, so I can't feel what my feelings are around my trauma. And we start this game
mhm,
of, oh, this person's feeling more than I am. And it's
yeah,
like, but if we go back to that statement of it's all the same, well, that makes sense then, because what you were just saying, you might have perceived this trauma, this belief inside of you that got created
yeah,
differently than I created that belief. But that's where empathy comes in, is I
yeah,
can go, I can relate to that belief of whatever you
yeah,
created because I got mine created in this scenario.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I also think that there's like this level of understanding, which I guess is, maybe I'm repeating what you're saying,
That's
but
okay.
when you go through trauma, um, it's it's almost like you can really relate to somebody else. Like, oh my gosh, maybe not so much what, like, I could be like, oh, I feel worthless. Like, this is what my trauma did to me, is I feel worthless. But you may not feel like that because of your trauma, but you feel like some other belief within yourself. But because we've walked trauma together, there's a lot of feelings and events that happen within that trauma that we can relate on a trauma level. So
Yes.
I have found that when somebody hasn't gone through extenuating trauma, um, some people just, they don't understand, and they're like, then there's almost like this judgment to you too, because I've experienced that, where people will just look at you or be like, oh wow, or like judge
Mm,
you based on what happened to
mm,
you. And then because of what happened to you, like for myself, let me just speak for myself, because of what happened to me, and then I made choices out because of that pain, which then brought more trauma into my life, like now it's like self trauma and these stupid decisions that I made. It's like you're being looked at and it's like, you know what? You don't even know what I went through. Not that that's an
Mm,
excuse. Now it's not an excuse, but at the same time, that's all I knew. That's all I knew was to survive and do these
yeah.
things because I was just trying to escape. So there is definitely a thing of being like, let me put myself in your shoes and see,
Yeah.
like, I couldn't even imagine going through things that like I feel like my trauma is horrible. But
Mm,
when I can see somebody else going through trauma and I can put myself in their shoes and I'm just like, wow, I could never, that would be really hard for them. So there is this
mm.
like sitting down, like almost just like wanting to go sit down with somebody and being like, hey, like I see you.
That's
I understand.
empathy.
Yeah. I see you. I
Yeah.
understand. I'm sorry this happened to you. I can't relate to this specific event, but I can relate to the pain
Yeah.
and just tell them that you love them and it's going to be okay. And I know that's so like a blah statement because when you're in the trauma, there's like, no, it's not, but it will. I promise it will be okay. And
Mm,
eventually, on the other end, it's going to be okay. And then when you see all the beautiful sunshine after healing and all the pretty flowers, like visually, this is what I do. Like, and I can smell the field of wildflowers and there's like horses
mm,
running and I don't know,
mm,
all this beautiful stuff, then it's like, oh, it's going to be okay. And so when you get to the point of like, oh, you know what, it is going to be okay, then the healing becomes easier, I think,
mm.
um, a little bit.
Yeah.
There's stuff that's hard, but yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a ongoing again process. Is the more tools you get, the more resources you
Yeah.
get on it, right? Like
Uh-huh.
it's the journey is different at each point, right? Can I share something that
Yeah.
about or an opinion of mine around like
Yeah.
kind of what you had just shared around shame? Or
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to say it's shame. That is
Yeah.
the point that I'm going into is when I heard you say like, like these people don't understand and they haven't experienced it, and so they like you kind of feel that like judging thing come
Yeah.
on.
Okay.
That
I'm so
is their
sorry. One.
no, you're good.
Okay. Love you. Bye. Peace. Be good. Okay. Take your lunch. Take your lunch, please. Okay. Okay.
For me, when I hear you say that, that's their shame because that is their trauma. And I don't
Yeah.
know what it looks
That's
like,
a good
but
point.
they can't hold the space for you because when we're in shame, we have no room for empathy.
That's good. Yeah.
So if I'm in my shit over here, like, and you're telling me vulnerable things, then I'm not going to be able to hold that space.
That's true. That's
So
very true.
they haven't worked through it yet.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Look at
Mm-hmm.
that. Learning
Mm.
something new.
Yeah, that's what we do here. We're
Preach
just
it.
always learning something new.
Yeah. So
Right?
I wanted to piggyback off the spiritual abuse thing. Because
Please do, because I
that's
really want to hear some of your thoughts on that as we grew up together. Please open the
yeah.
doors to our forgiveness around spiritual abuse.
So it's a little bit wild to me. Maybe I'm just a little bit late bloomer. So not a late bloomer, but
Mm,
I think at the last couple of years I'm realizing a lot of things.
mm,
So I just want to separate a couple things real quick because on one side, I literally love God so much. Like my faith is
mm,
so strong within the Lord and within like what I believe with him, that he is the Lord and he is the
mm-hmm,
God and I'm like I want to be faithful and worship him. Um but then there's like this part of like the church, right?
mm,
And
mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry, Abby. I think my dog Can you give
What's
me
wrong?
like 30 more seconds? I think my
Yeah,
dog. Okay.
yeah, it's
This is
okay.
for life, people.
This
Yeah.
is real life, and it's good. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll be like 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good. I feel like I should put on like elevator music while we wait. It's okay. I get to recoup and take all of my fluids as I sit here. Everybody take a little break and
Okay.
refluid themselves. I
Yeah.
said I should put on
So,
elevator music. Okay, go ahead.
or crickets. Like just
Yeah.
cricket.
Now you
Okay.
just get the whole house now. It's good, right?
That's good. That's okay.
Yeah.
This is my real life, guys. I'm a single parent and this is what we're doing. Trying to make it work. Okay.
Okay,
So
we got this.
So the spiritual abuse thing, yeah. So
Mhm.
on the other side is like the religious church side. I appreciate a good church, and what I mean a good church is if I'm going to go to church, please teach me about
Mm.
what I believe in. I don't want to go to church and listen to your TED Talks about whatever you're supposed to be preaching on. Um, I find a lot of discrepancies behind the church, you know?
Mm.
Like when you get behind the scenes, things
Mm.
that make me go like, what are you, weren't you just on the stage preaching about supposedly Jesus? That
Mm.
wasn't really like a message anyway. It was about Jesus, but it wasn't about the Lord, you know? And then it's
Mm.
like some things that go on behind the scenes make me question a lot of things. Um, Not only that, when I read the Bible, you know, and then I watch because I'm a very big observer. I could be extrovert. I'm more of like extrovert introvert. I'm
Mhm.
extroverted if you know me, but if I'm like new to a situation or I'm really trying to watch something, like I'll be super observant and 98% of the time I'm usually correct with my like intuition and things like that.
Mhm.
So it's like I'm watching like whatever I'm reading in the Bible isn't lining up with what is happening, you know,
Mm.
in the world, in the church. And I'm like, how can the church be a church, but you're not actually doing what the Bible is calling you to do? And I'm not saying that's
Mm.
every church because I want to be very careful because I do use ministry, right? So I don't want to bash the church a lot. And by ministry, I mean part of my dancing is I teach within churches,
Mhm.
right? Like dance through. That's just part of what I do. I mean, I dance
Yeah.
everywhere, but a specific part is I am in the church and I am teaching.
Yeah. Do you mind if
Creative,
I like take a moment with you?
yeah, creative arts and stuff.
So with that, what
Yeah,
I just want to take a moment because this is such a big deal, right? And
yeah.
this is something that like hits so many of us.
Hmm.
And I appreciate your vulnerability around it. And just like take a moment, if you would, with me and like just recognize the shame even in talking about it, right?
Yeah,
And just like taking a
yeah.
breath. Yeah.
Seriously.
Like that, because that's what I kind of keep hearing from you. And please stop me if you
Yes.
do not want me interjecting this at
No, that's
all.
fine.
But that's what I'm like seeing as you're talking. Like I have to like cover myself. I have to
Yeah,
protect myself. And it's like, let's just like know that you are safe and your feelings are valid
yeah,
and you love God
yeah,
and everything else is your experience. And if someone's going to be upset at you, again, that's their shame.
yeah. That's good. That's true. Yeah.
So just take a deep breath with me.
Oh,
Let it fall out.
yeah.
Right? And you are safe. You are present and
Uh-huh.
your experience is yours. And
Yes.
let's move from this space that you are the center point between heaven and earth.
Yeah. That's
Mm.
good, you know, and I think probably because it's still I'm like within the past couple years I'm just realizing things, you know. I would
Mm-hmm.
always question stuff, but it's fresh for me to realize things, and so I think I am in this part where it's like, "Oh my gosh, what is happening?" But then there's
Yeah.
this other part where I'm like, "Oh my God, like Lord, I really do love you. God, I
Yeah.
love God." And there's only
Mm.
things in my life that happened like like him coming to the nursing home, you know?
Yeah.
That for me was like God. But I think there is like this, oh my gosh, I don't know if I should talk about this. We all know what's
Mm-hmm.
happening, you know? So there is like
Yeah.
this shame and almost want to protect in it. And I think probably because it's new for me. So I'm just realizing
Yeah.
things. Yeah, but you're correct.
Yeah.
You're
But again, that's that empathy. I can relate because I'm
hmm.
working on that forgiveness. I
Yeah,
mean, a lot with, I've been working on that one with God for a while.
yeah,
And with my brother, it's newer, right? So, like, we're at these different spaces and probably have similar beliefs. And now that's why you were able to speak to me in that space.
yeah,
And that's why I'm able to be like,
yeah,
hey, and speak to
yeah,
you in this space.
yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. So, share with us, right? Being center
Yeah.
point, heaven and earth. What are some of these things that you wanted to share that you're kind of like shifting through and going through around spiritual religious abuse?
Um, I think what's the word? Contradict. I
Mm-hmm.
guess so.
Yeah.
Hypocritical. That's the
Mm.
word. Hypocritical. very contradicting.
Mm.
No, really like an example of what within the church.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes there's not like an example of what Christ is, or it's like saying one thing and doing another, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, those are things that I'm experiencing, or not showing what Christ really is. And we're not made to be perfect, right? Like, I don't think the most perfect Christian or person who believes in the Lord can be perfect, but there's definitely like an example that needs to be set. And so I think I'm just trying to search, and even, and I'm just going to say it, within my own family. I mean, it is what it is, right? I'm like looking at examples and I'm like, what? I appreciate you. I
Mm.
appreciate being raised in church.
Mm.
I appreciate being able to know who God is on my own,
Mm.
but I also started seeking my own journey on that. Like, who is God? Like, I went to
Mm.
church because we were going to church,
Mm. I went for friends,
but,
so I feel that.
but I want to find out for myself. And so a lot of the situations in my life happened and made me go, oh, yeah, you know what? God is real for me. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
believe that. And then that's what started me on my journey of asking questions and then noticing things and then just watching things in my own family where it's like,
Mm.
okay, I don't expect us to be perfect. But dude, if you're going to walk this walk and talk this talk, like what is happening? Why are me and my brother being treated a certain way? Or
Mm.
why did this situation happen? Or why did you say that? And how can you, you know,
So I
just
don't
all
want to
these,
totally put you on the spot, but again, our listeners, the best
yeah,
thing that we can do is kind of like, if I could encourage you to be a little bit
yeah,
more vulnerable with me if you're open to it, like share the specific like verbiage
uh,
that's kind of being used, just because I want to be able to relate to you
sure,
too on kind of what's happening.
sure. Okay.
It's up to you. You totally don't have to.
Well, I will. I just, I'm sure my family's not going to be very happy, but I don't care. Um, so
And it's okay if you care too, right? Like that is the piece,
yeah,
because right, ultimately we want connection, right?
yeah,
We love, you know,
yeah,
the reason it's hurting so much with my brother is because I love him, right?
yeah.
Like, so it makes sense.
Yeah, so my brother, I love my brother so much. I wish we were like closer. He's in a different state, married, living his life, and I'm obviously here doing my thing. But he moved away, I think when he was like 18
Mm-hmm.
or 19 or something like that. I'm sure it was for to like chase a girl a little bit, but also I think he just wanted to get away from things that were happening at home because I wasn't at home. He was still living at home.
Mm-hmm.
And home life was not horrible, right? Like my mom and dad were divorced, but they really did pour into us and they are very good parents. But then there's this other side of there's a lot of unhealed trauma that transferred down to me and my brother that
Mm-hmm.
um just the way that we've been treated
Mm-hmm.
is like, but you literally took us to church. Like what? Like you want to be the first person to say, "Oh, I love the Lord," and "Oh, I love this," and make sure you go to church and make sure the kids are there. But then, like you, but behind the scenes is like you're
Mm-hmm.
treating your children, even as grown-ups, like completely different than what you're portraying.
Mm-hmm.
And so that example, as I've gotten older, within the past couple years, has been like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed because of that example, like in the church, I'm noticing things. And I think I just started noticing things in the church because I was working within like a school church setting that I noticed stuff. And then within the church, I've noticed stuff. And I'm just like, what is this? So then it brought me to this space where it's like, is this actually real? Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand because when I read the Bible and then I watch, it's like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand what's happening because it
Yeah.
doesn't line up.
I can totally relate to that. Something I share with my kids, because I think they get really confused with me about, because again, I have been for years pretty much been working through my own spiritual stuff and figuring out
Yeah.
what God is to me or higher power again. And something I kind of have told the kids is, yes, I believe in a higher power. I don't know totally who it is yet, but what I like to, or not, but what I like to view it as for myself is I tell them that I feel like Jesus got a black eye. Like it's like gossip. Like all these people were gossiping, and he's not here like physically, right? So he doesn't get to stand up for himself. Not that I totally think he would, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
so he got the black eye for what other people are gossiping about.
Mm. Wow. That's pretty powerful. Yeah. Huh. They're gonna let that sit for a minute.
Yeah, let it
What?
sink in.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing too is, and I think this is what made me really question some things too, is during COVID, we were all home. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm going to read a lot. But I read the Bible a lot, that like more than I probably ever have in my entire life. I read it
Mm,
daily. I try to study it daily, but because we had all that time, so I'm reading and I come across where it's talking about Passover, and for me, I found Passover to be so beautiful. And I don't know, I guess it was just the timing during COVID that I was this specific chapter that I was reading was supposed to stick out to me. And so that day is when my journey really started of like, what?
mm,
I started really questioning things because let me tell you why. Because in the Passover it was talking about what Passover meant, and like, to ask me now, I can't remember like word
it's
by
okay.
word, right? But
It's okay.
the specific part stood out to me about what we're to eat at Passover, and Passover is actually more important than Easter, like the day he rose.
Mm,
And so in the chapter it said, for generations to come, Passover is supposed to be celebrated. And I'm sitting here thinking, and that's when I was like, what?
mm,
If we're all reading the same Bible, right? I don't know why I didn't see that before. Maybe I skipped it. Maybe I didn't get to that part in the Bible. But so I'm like, if we were supposed to do this and we're all Christians and we're all reading the same thing, why is the world celebrating Easter, first of all, and putting Easter bunnies in the church when the Bible that we're all reading and that you preach from is specifically telling you Passover is to be celebrated for years to come? So then I was like, I'm going to call my mom. And I called my mom and I said, hey, mom, I was reading this in the Bible and this specific part about Passover. And I said, it says we're supposed to celebrate this. So if we're going to do this and walk the walk, like, I'm trying to find questions for myself now because I believe in the Lord, but I want to be sure that I'm going to do what the Bible says if I'm going to like walk the walk with him. And I said, so how come we haven't been celebrating it? How come the world churches are not celebrating Passover? And there are some, but not a lot. And literally
mm-hmm,
the response was like, oh, because this is just what we do all the time. We just celebrate Easter. We don't do that. And I'm like, but it's in the Bible. Like, it's
mm,
literally in the Bible. I'm confused now because now, like, we're supposed to read the Bible and walk the walk, but then now you're telling me, oh, don't like, whatever, just, it's not. No, we're going to celebrate Easter, but we don't. The world
mm,
celebrates Easter bunnies and then throws in behind it, he is risen. So like,
mm.
so there's Passover, and then there's like the Easter bunny and the Easter eggs are up here, and then it's like we're just going to throw in a cross, and it's Resurrection Day to like comfort, like just to say that, oh, it's about Jesus. It's really not. Nobody's celebrating that.
Isn't it so? As you're talking, it's like I'm thinking back to like kind of how I started my journey of like questioning things too.
Yeah.
And isn't it, again, in the Bible, it talks about being childlike, right?
Yeah.
And isn't it interesting how for you it's this like this little thing that
Mm-hmm.
kind of opened your eyes that you're like, huh,
Yeah.
Easter, like.
Yeah.
And then for me, I was a child, I will say it was all around alcohol that really started opening my eyes.
Interesting.
So, you know what I mean? Like, it's just,
Yeah.
it makes me curious about like how we all kind of like start thinking about these things, like
Question.
very childlike questions. Like,
Yeah.
well, why, you know what I mean? Like my kids too, right? They'll see me having a drink and they're like, well, why can't I? I'm like, well, it's the law. You know what I mean? Like, but really, like, it's just, but they're childlike questions. Well, mine was like, well, why can't I have a drink? Because I was LDS at the time, and that's literally what started my journey.
Mm,
And for you, you're like, well, why aren't we doing this if God tells me? But Easter, right? Like we
yeah.
have
Uh-huh.
bunnies, right? Like such a childlike question. Like I love it.
Yeah. And I think what made me go to Passover, I don't know if I just opened, I don't recall really why I went to that passage or if I was just thinking about it, but I was there, I read it. And maybe it was because Easter was coming up.
Mm.
You know, we were locked down. I was going to say locked up. I mean, we
I
were.
mean, basically, rough times.
We were in our own prisons in our house.
Yeah, pretty much.
So when I was locked up and doing time, right, I
Yeah.
read the Bible like all the other inmates.
Yes.
And it was probably that because I was going, what is like bunnies? Like bunny, it would irritate me. And to this day, to be honest, it still does. I'm not like for myself, I don't do Easter bunny baskets. I don't have Easter bunnies out because I'm like, no, I'm not gonna put an Easter bunny up and be like, he is risen. No, that's not even no.
Mm.
So anyway, but yeah, that's I think I started questioning like the Easter bunny thing. And then I read and then what's crazy is when I find out information or I'm questioning, I will go to like the rabbit hole of rabbit holes. And I don't even know if it's a rabbit hole, but it's like I like to learn and I like to research and I want to be
Mm.
able to know what I know.
Mm.
And so I read something about Easter and like, because I was like, how did Easter start? Where did even Easter come from? You know, because Easter is not in the Bible, it's Resurrection Day and Passover. That's it. So where the heck did Easter come from in these bunnies? And then it went on to this whole
Mm.
learning about Easter and the history of it and how it means like, you know, reproduction and within the feminine and how
Mm.
it's about sex and all this stuff. And I'm like,
Mm.
does the world know? So then this is when I started questioning, does the church know that? And if they do, which
Mm.
I'm sure some people do, right? Then you're
Mm.
still promoting this. So now you're promoting this whatever sexual thing
Mm.
and then slapping he is risen on it, and that's
Mm.
contradicting to me. Like you can't mix those two for me. You can't mix that and say this is about the Lord because it's not, because now you're just being blasphemy, like you know, making fun of him for me. And it's like the Lord, God is God. If you think about God and the Lord, like he is a God, we worship him. Why are you literally disrespecting this dude? Because and then I
They
get
put a
all
black
defensive.
eye on him.
Yeah. And then I start
Mm.
wanting to be like protective, like, no, this is my
Mm.
homeboy. What are you doing? You know?
Mm.
So these are
Mm.
like the kind of things that I question.
Mhm.
And then so when, let me just clarify too with my mom's answer. I realized within that moment that maybe she didn't know
Mm.
because I've noticed that Christianity can be a robotic system a little bit. Um, and so maybe she didn't.
That's shocking. The brainwashing of the government in the United States. No,
So
really?
maybe she's
Yeah.
like, she just knows what she knows and maybe she just wasn't taught to do that or you know, and then that trickled down to like maybe from her parents and then here. So
Mm.
it's almost like when you start questioning, it's almost, and then when you like, for me when I was questioning and I questioned my mom, if she doesn't know or maybe she felt like, oh shoot, I should have done that, it's like then it brings up her emotions and she can't sit in that, and I have to like realize that, you know.
Mm.
But then it opens the door for everybody to like, it's okay to question, like it's okay to question this. God's not going to be like, you're questioning me, you can't, like, no,
Well, I don't
we
think
need to.
it's God. I think it's, again, just
Yeah,
like when we started this conversation, it's the shame
yeah,
surrounding it that we're afraid to say we don't know.
yeah, right,
Be-
and yeah, that's good. So yeah, I had to realize that maybe she just, and not just her, but within the church, you know, then it made
Mhm.
me look at like, as frustrated as I get, then I also have to look at the church like maybe they don't know because it is passed down from like, no, this is what we do. We worship the Lord and we're going to read the Bible. And I do believe that, you know, we read the Bible, the Christians read the Bible, the church reads the Bible, but I think like thinking outside of just what's been passed down maybe
Mhm.
is like difficult for some. So we just learn all the same thing without realizing there's so much beautiful things in the Bible that should be celebrated, and I don't understand what we're doing. Or,
Yeah.
no, why are you reacting this way? That's not what the God would do. So
Well,
you can't
yeah.
preach one thing and then react and then, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So I do believe there's things that we have to work on and that we can allow healing. Like it all comes back to healing, right? So if
Mhm.
you're going to believe in the Lord, He can heal you. I promise you that. But you also have to be able to be like, hey, you know what? This is still not healed in myself. And I'm probably not going to show Christ right now to you in this aspect because I can't. I literally don't know how because I'm healing. I'm trying. I promise I'll try. You know, I feel like that's more respectable than be like Christ, do what the Bible says, do this, but then I'm going to go ahead and act like this, and I'm not going to show it to you, but you do what I say. You know what I'm saying? So,
Absolutely. I think
yeah.
that's, again, going back to what I said about the brainwashing of the government, honestly, is breaking down these cultural,
Mhm.
societal norms.
Yeah.
We've been, a lot of us, I won't say everyone, but a lot of us have been taught from a very young age. Like, I hear all the time with clients that I work with, like, you're seen, not heard, right? When you grow up. And then you
Yeah.
think about going into school where you have to raise your hand to go to the bathroom. Like,
Yeah.
there are, you know what I mean? Then you go to church and you're just being fed these things, whether it's school, home, and church. Like, no wonder
Mhm.
everybody's, or a lot of us are like, whoa, like, what is true, what is not, how do I feel, how can I even say as an adult how I feel without being ridiculed? And then now I feel like what I'm seeing as a society is that everyone's opinion is fact. And it's like, let's all take a breath together
Yeah.
and know that there's this like generational shame right now, because we cannot sit, like we said, in this together, knowing that you're having your experience, knowing that somebody else is having their experience, if we're in shame, because then there's no room for empathy.
Right. That's good. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I had something I was going to say off that, but I think maybe I'm just supposed to sit in that.
Mm, yes.
Yeah, it is a very much robotic system of everything. And for
Mm-hmm,
me, I will forever back up the Lord. I will forever go to him, and I forever will believe the Bible, but I'm struggling within
mm,
the religious aspect of it. Like, not the spirituality, but the religious
mm,
part of this
mm-hmm,
is, I don't feel like God is a religion.
mm-hmm,
Christianity is religion, but the Lord is
mm-hmm,
definitely not a religion. And he's very much spiritual, and like I don't know, he's amazing. I love him.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, the
Yeah,
church, I'm working through that.
same.
And I have visited some churches that are like phenomenal, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I love you. Like, this is
Mm,
what I feel like you're doing amazing, And
mm-hmm,
if someone was going to be like, who's God? Maybe I should go to a church. Then let me just try this church, and and the churches that I feel are honoring God in the Bible. I feel like they would get something from that church. But
mm,
and this is not just, and let's just be real, like within the Christian community, whether you're Christian or not, um, you can see what's happening in the church, but even more so now, Christians are realizing,
mm,
well, Christianity, or, if you're believing in the Lord and you're seeking for truth, it's not a secret of what's happening in the church. Like, the church needs to rise up a little bit,
mm,
and have a backbone and do what they need to do. That's just what I feel, and not be so religious. And it's crazy because this is also what got me on my journey. I don't know if you what's that movie? Oh, Jesus Revolution. It was
mm-hmm,
about it came out a couple years ago, and it was about the church revival, or the tent revivals that were happening. I forgot the dude's name, but it was many years ago. It was like during the hippie phase. There was like a hippie movement, but he was
mm-hmm,
going around. It was just tents. Like, they called it tent revivals because it was just one guy, and he was like a hippie, and he literally set forth out to just preach the word of the Lord.
mm-hmm,
He saved so many souls, reached so many people, right? Just walking, just doing tent stuff. There was like, so the movie was about like the history of this, and how this all started and what he did. And so within this movement, like, he would just baptize people in the ocean, and
mm,
there was no program or agenda. It's like, hey, meet me here. We're just going to talk about God. And he would open his Bible, and he would just talk. He would just talk about the Lord and preach about teach about what was in the book, and people would become interested. There was a part in this movie where he ended up having to have, like, I don't know, I would guess call it a manager. Like, this guy was trying to be his manager because he was drawing in so many people, that he was like, we're not going to be able to fill tents. We need to have a building. And within this building, now we're going to have funds, right? To, like,
mm,
do this building and keep this going. And the guy, I
mm,
forgot his name. Every time I forget his name. But the guy that started the revolution was like, but wait, I'm not, why? And in the movie, he was like, I don't want the money. Like, this isn't about the
mm,
money. We can go out, and we can just, I don't know,
Mm.
like we can go to the beach or we can go somewhere where there's lots of room. And so the manager was
Mm.
like, well, you're drawing more and more people. We're not going to be able to have, you know, where are we going to put everybody? And so basically now it becomes this back and forth. And I'm just like, so that movie opened up my eyes too. And my question is all the time, if that Jesus revolution, that tent happened without ties, like, I mean, the Bible does talk about tithing, you know, and giving tithes back to, I don't know if it's the church, but, you know, just giving back, tithing, make sure that you tithe. I feel like it's important, but I question when it's like, you know, like one time there was a preacher that literally stood up and said we were going to tithe for him and his wife to go on vacation. And
Mm.
so that's kind of stuff like makes me start questioning things, you know. So when we go back to the movie of he was questioning, why do I have to have a building? I don't want to tithe for the building. I just want to be with the people and teach them, because that's drawing more people than what you're trying to do. And I think once that starts happening, people are going to start questioning, right? And they're going to not want to come because they're going to see now like the difference. I love that
Yeah.
movie so much. So if you ever want some questions answered, anybody go watch Jesus Revolution.
Yeah, well, it makes me think of two things actually. Something that I've been learning because I've been really for my own journey, which is separate. I guess it ties into higher power, whatever
Mm,
that is. Again, for you, for anybody listening, around money and the thought of like it makes me think of that. What I've been reading this book called oh geez, I don't something to prosper. Anyways, the point is I can put it in the show notes if you guys want to listen to it. I'll put that there. But it's talking about how we need, again, societally, right? We think that we get money from a job, right?
mm,
Or these like, where is the money going to come from? And when we can realize that source, whatever it is you believe in, is completely abundant, that we're more than being able to have abundance if we can just connect with that we are a vessel and
mm.
channels will come to us. Our job might be a channel, right? Like we might have something coming out, but when we realize that source is the one that truly gives us everything, then we will be abundant to whatever
Yeah.
comes.
Yeah.
Right. So I think about that with that guy that like, oh, I don't need anything because it's just coming to me. Like I'm provided for. Right. Like, and what is money? Well, it's being provided for in some ways, right? It's being able to go on vacation in some ways, it's others. But do I need to get a manager to be able to hold this space for money? Because I'm
Yeah.
guessing he's probably being fed. If that many people are coming to him, they're probably taking him out, right? Or bringing him food, right? That's money. That's source, right?
Yeah.
Get sources
Mhm.
giving to me. And then the second thing I think about that is one of the first questions, again, I thought about around that time too, when I started my journey, is I have felt more, again, energy, if you call it, or if you call it spirit, some, or Holy Spirit for others, or connecting with God, again, whatever it is you connect with. I feel that more in conversations like this than I do going to church for me.
Mm, yeah.
And
And
that I
it
think
is.
is,
Yeah.
and that's what I think it is this guy became so big because it's not a matter of do this, right? Like this is what the Bible says. It's having these connections that we were literally made for brings in energy, spirit, God into the conversation because we are connecting so deeply. And that
Yeah.
is the power.
Yeah. There's definitely like sitting with people, you know, and being within that energy, because we all carry energy. I mean, it is what it is. But I also believe, you know, he was literally reading straight from the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not like sitting down like a story reading it word by word, but hey, this is what this says, and let's look at what this means. Let's study this together and see what we can or this is, you know, let me portray what I feel like the Bible is saying, and let me teach you, and then let's have conversation about it, right? And then it reached those
Yes.
people, and then they sat and they're like, oh wow, this makes sense. And so for that's when I go back to like, if you read the Bible, let's just take like the church out, like the building, let's take the building out. We are the church. Like this is what I feel like. We are the church. The Lord provided this Bible, you know, if you believe that, right? Because I believe it. But if you believe that the Bible is the word and the word is the Lord, then that Bible, if you go sit under a tree every single day and pick apart to learn about the Bible, it will teach you. Like the Holy Spirit will teach you on your own what this means, right? And then you're going to want more, and then you're going to want more, and then you're going to be like, oh, well, what about this? And wait, what about that? And where can I find this in the Bible? And then it makes you go question other things, and it makes your whole vision like change, because then you're like, well, I'm reading this. This is what I feel like it's taught me, and this is what I feel like the Lord's teaching me. But then I notice this, and that's not aligning up. So what is that about?
It's so
And
fun. It's sorry, go ahead. Where do you have
no,
more? Oh,
no,
it's so fun. Like this is where it's like again just showing how important it is to have different again opinions and stories and experiences, because I am on the other side where again I do have that spiritual abuse, not just religion, where again shout out Brittany, that she literally at one point, yeah, hashtag Brittany Johnson, that at one point she literally, and I will just say she does believe in God, by the way, like she goes to church, not that that matters either, but I'm just saying that for other people who are listening that
yeah,
are more on your side, and I'm
yeah.
saying this for more people who are on my side that do have that spiritual abuse, where she literally told me to stop reading it because it was causing so much like
Mm,
re-trauma for me.
interesting.
And so for me, not picking up my Bible has released me again to create that space to again believe in God, higher power, source,
Yeah,
whatever it is, because reading it was so traumatic
yeah,
for me every time I picked it up.
yeah. So yeah, definitely. If there's some spiritual abuse around it, I mean, I
Yeah.
can imagine picking up a Bible. And I guess I'm saying like, if you just pick up your Bible, I didn't mean that to be like you just need to do it.
No. I'm not saying that it's
But
wrong
yeah,
what you're saying. I'm more saying that it's beautiful that we both
mm,
have, you know what I mean? It's going to reach different people. And
yeah,
that's why I want to say what like my experience was, because people who are needing to hear what you are saying
yeah,
need to hear what you are saying, and people
yeah,
who are listening and need to hear what I'm saying, that's that's the beauty of why we all need to be speaking. That's
yeah,
what I want this podcast to be, is having the different opinions, having the different experiences, having somebody else who doesn't agree with anything that we're saying, right? Because it doesn't mean that their story doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that what their experience isn't valid. It means that we all have different experiences and different truths for
yeah,
us.
yeah. And you know, if there is spiritual abuse, obviously it's going to be very difficult to even fathom anything about the Lord or religion or Christianity or like all that stuff, because it's all there's already underlying abuse, but then to try to like even see through that is like
Mm-hmm.
spider webs that are just hanging and you have to like peek through, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I'm really sorry that like you experienced the spiritual abuse. I know it's really painful.
Thank you.
Like it's
Yeah.
really difficult and it's really annoying and frustrating and all the things, you know?
Yeah.
And
It is. Thank you.
yeah, the religious side of that is very like the religious side of what people make God to be
Mm.
is completely unfair, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah.
And I just feel like there needs to be more Jesus instead of more religion.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that goes
So,
into like those ties too for me. Just like
yeah,
as we kind of like probably are wrapping up here, like those ties for me with forgiveness is some of the, again, I feel like the core, my ex, like there's a lot of forgiveness there. And then like a tie to that is my brother. A tie to that is like these family like pieces
yeah,
with like his family. And then there's like a tie to that that's around church. Like lots of
mm,
hurt during that time around church that
yeah,
led to like that's kind of like separate from like my mom and that spiritual and religious abuse.
mhm,
So, and again, I feel like a lot of that too. Like it's like these core
yeah,
wounds around like my mom and my ex, like have been healed or continuing to forgive. Because again, moments come up, right? We keep
right,
forgiving, but then the ties of like the bubbles up here, like a web, you know what I mean?
yeah,
That are starting the forgiveness train for me.
yeah,
So, yes.
yeah. So I mean,
Uh,
so good.
for real. It just and literally an hour and a half. We're at
I know.
an hour and 24 minutes right now.
Yeah. So I
Flew
thought I
by.
had to end at 10:30, but if we could, I mean, we can continue unless we want to end.
Yeah.
But
You know, what I've done in the past actually is
what's that?
I've like stopped it and then we can like come back and it could be like a
Oh,
part 2. Do you want to do
ooh,
that?
yeah, we can do
Okay,
that.
you know what I think would be, are you open to doing some breath work? real quick?
Yes. Yes, but
Okay.
I wanted to say something real
Yeah,
quick
yeah,
because I
yeah.
wanted
Go, go.
to, we were talking about like if people have to forgive you,
Mm. Mm-hmm,
which
mm-hmm.
I think that's a really beautiful part in healing, to be able to be like, wow, I was probably not the best person ever.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we are in somebody's story, there people are going like, oh my gosh, like to imagine somebody feeling that unforgiveness towards you is like, I caused somebody that. So I'm gonna share a quick story to help
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe you, whoever else. But there was a time in my life where, because I was doing what I was doing, there was, I don't want to get into the situation because it's very dirty. But I made some really horrible decisions, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I on purpose hurt this young lady. Um,
Mm.
and also my children's father, right?
Mm.
So, but whatever. That was another situation. But within this lady anyway, I said she hated me for like ever. She literally hated me.
Mm.
She used to like reach out to me and say some really mean things, and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't stand that girl. What is this?" So I'd like would make her the problem. And then I
Mm.
became, when I got through the healing and all this stuff, I came to a point where I was like, you know what? Here's some situations that I did. I wasn't the best person and I really need a chance. Like, and her specifically was the one that I was like, God, please just bring her to me. Like, I
Mm.
don't know how this is going to happen. And I don't know what's going to happen if she ever sees me in
Mm.
person because she literally hates me. But
Mm.
I feel like I need that space to tell her I'm really sorry, and I hope that you can forgive me. And whatever. So all these years went by, and I didn't find her, but I went to Circle K one day, literally right up the street from my house, and I walk in, and
Mm.
she's there, and it was like years later. Oh my gosh, can you hear that outside my window?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's fine. Again, we're sitting on a
So many
couch.
events.
Everybody is sitting on a couch together and we're just talking. You're good.
Everybody, all these events have happened in my life
Mhm.
in this hour and a half. Okay, so but we're like older, right? This was probably like 6 years ago, maybe 5 years
Mm.
ago, or yeah, 6 years ago, 5 years ago. I don't know, within that time frame. So it was
Mhm.
it was very recent.
Mhm.
And this situation happened when my younger son was like 1.
Mm.
So that, and he's 20 now. So that's like a long time of her being so mad at me, right? And
Mhm.
so she was working at Circle K, and I walked in and I saw her. She checked me out and everything. There was no words exchanged, and I knew who she was. I just didn't know if she knew who I was because we're older now. We like looks have changed. But anyways, I was like, and I left to go to my car, and I'm like, no, no. Like I know this is happening right now for this reason. So I stayed, and I used to smoke cigarettes. So I purposely, no, I wasn't smoking at that time. I apologize. But I knew that she had smoked. So I'm like, well, maybe she'll come out for like a cigarette if she still smokes or whatever. So I kind of just lollygagged around my car, like took my time and like was pretending I was on my phone. And then I
Mm.
said, I'm just going to wait for her. So she eventually did come out. It wasn't even that long. And I don't know
Mm.
if she saw me waiting out there, like outside the Circle K, like whatever, but she came and I went up to her and I said, hey, I'm not going to give her name, but hey, are you so and so? She said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm sure you remember me. I'm sure. She goes, yeah. And she was like so snotty. Like she was so
Mm.
rude. And I said, I just been waiting for a chance to talk to you. And I said, I'm really, really sorry for all the pain that I've caused you your entire life, that you've been holding this bitterness to me. And the anger and what I did was absolutely wrong. And I've had to ask for forgiveness for myself for what I did, you know? And
Mhm.
um, and I said this isn't an excuse, but just to give you a little perspective of like, I was a completely different woman back then, like I
Mm.
was going through my own trauma, my own pain, and I was acting out and I was trying to be a young mom and I was trying to figure this out. It doesn't give me any reason to treat somebody like garbage or like hurt you in a way that I did. Cause what I did on purpose, I did it to hurt you. And which
Mm.
makes it even worse, it wasn't like unintentional or whatever. Yeah, unintentional. It was intentional. And so I said,
Mm.
I would just hope that you can forgive me, like,
Mm.
and find space in yourself to forgive me so that you
Mm.
can be released of that. And literally, she just looked at me and she said, yeah, I knew it was you. And she said, I forgive you. And she's like, it's all good. Thanks for talking to me. And she's like, I can't even believe that you were waiting for me. And I was like, well, yeah, like I was waiting for a moment to see you in this lifetime to talk to you. And so in
Mm,
that moment, like she forgave me, and it was like, and I said, oh, wow, thank you so much for forgiving me. And I said, you know, as you continue like things come up that you remember, I was like, just remember to be like, no, I forgive her. Like for yourself, you know, forgive it for yourself
mm,
because, or it's going to just eat you alive. And so it was really beautiful. So
mm,
for anybody that needs, you know, if they are needing to forgive you or are needing to, or seeking or hoping somebody would forgive them,
mm.
that's also a very beautiful, scary process because sometimes with people for unforgiveness, it's like, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to punch me, if they're going to be mad, if they're going to not forgive me. That's also a thing, you know? But
Yeah.
I think if you just come to that person, if you get a chance to go
Mm.
to that person, or if you don't get a chance to go to that person, um, just, I don't know. I don't know what the words to say.
I feel
Just,
like tell me if this is off, what I'm thinking is like it comes back to like being able to forgive yourself.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
Mm.
for sure.
If you don't get to say
Yeah.
something to someone or have that
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm,
Yeah, having to look in the mirror is
mm,
really hard. And I think
mm-hmm,
that was one of the hardest things that I had to do. And there's still
mm-hmm,
things that like I mean, my personality is pretty spunky and feisty, so I'm not, and I'm pretty blunt. So sometimes if I say something, you know, like I'm not like I'm hurting people now on purpose, but I can just be like, ah, oh my God. And I might say something and then I'm like, oh wait, like I didn't really mean to do that, you know, or
mm,
whatever. So just looking at yourself always in the mirror, inward, making sure that you're like representing what you want and your character is good and going through the healing
mm,
and forgiving, but also being able to ask for forgiveness. Asking for
mm,
forgiveness is huge too, because then it
mm,
releases that person and it shows love. Because then you can say, you
mm,
know what, I love you. I've changed. I'm sorry. And really,
yeah,
maybe even giving an explanation or not an explanation, just feeling out whatever that feels like between the two people. You know?
yeah.
And if
No,
you
I
can't
love
talk to
that.
them in physicality, like me and that girl did, like you can write a letter or
Yep,
however you need to forgive that person. But yeah.
yep. I love that. Thank you so much. I'm excited
Yeah.
to, I don't know what we're even going to talk about stopping and coming back, but I just want to take a moment. Okay. I always say this too when we do breath work. Like if you're driving and listening to this, don't do it. Okay. Like just like as a note, don't come with us into this breath work. So this also my new platform that I'm using doesn't connect, I don't think, sound, but that's okay.
Oh,
I'm just gonna have us do a couple deep breaths to release,
yeah.
like spike our system a little bit as we kind of, I feel like even for myself, I'll speak for myself, can feel it a little bit. So just to be able to spike it a little bit more so that we can come back into whatever we want to embody moving through our day if you're listening, and then you and I just getting recentered and present to go
Yeah.
into a different conversation together. Okay. So,
Yeah.
what we'll do is we're going to take deep belly breaths. We'll do about 15 spiking deep belly breaths all the way into your diaphragm. So, that actually what it is activating our fight, flight, and freeze. So, allowing whatever is pent up or came up, our shame in this session together to
Yeah.
release. And then I'll take you into a breath hold. Don't hold your breath as long as you can. Just when you're ready, release it. Okay.
Okay.
And then we'll
Okay.
go into that relaxing breath. So breathing through the nose and elongating out the mouth or nose and bringing back in whatever you want into this present moment. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll guide you through it because
Okay.
obviously I got to guide everybody else through it too and myself. All right. So just come inward, connect to the present moment, feeling your, if you're standing or sitting, that spine, that energy within yourself. Taking a breath, letting it out, taking another breath, let it fall out. We're going to go into that activating breath, deep belly breaths. Releasing any energy. about 5 more. Allowing whatever needs to move through. 2 more. 1 more. Bringing your breath all the way up to the top. Hold. How do you want to feel? What do you want to bring back in? And when you're ready, switching through the nose, elongating out the mouth. What are you wanting to bring back in? Relaxing into all that you are. Couple more breaths in this space. Attuning yourself with your spine again with this new energy. Feeling that energy go up your spine. And allowing yourself to now move through this space. Bringing your awareness back in. Coming present. And when you're ready, getting to open your eyes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you everybody for listening. Charise and I are going to pause this one and move over into our next one. All right.
Session 2.
Yep, part 2. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Charise. All right. Bye, everybody. See you on part 2.
Love you so much.
Yes, you too.